Well, here we are. We're back on our Skiff project again, and I hope we've given you guys enough time to catch up with us here. We're enthused about keeping going, and we've been asked some questions here about why we haven't used polysulfide between the planking. Now, we do use polysulfide or any kind of caulking really you could use, I suppose, except for polyurethane because it kind of melts with oil. So that's why we use polysulfide at all. But we don't use it between the planks on the bottom. And the reason is because we can't tame these planks really well. They're up and down. Each plank is bent a little bit differently. There's nothing here that lines the planks up with each other until we get the whole thing fastened down, and the runners are going to even the planking up. I wouldn't want the planking glued together at this point because you wouldn't be able to even it back up again. That would be one problem with it. The other problem with it would be that even if we made any attempt to even them all up, we'd get the stuff all over us and it'd just be a mess. It's the same reason why we don't dowel the planks together or biscuit them together or anything like that. We want to have as much mating surface as entirely possible so that when the planking swells up against each other, it mates really, really nicely and stays nice and tight like that. And the other reason why we don't put any rubber in there or any kind of bedding in there would be that what would happen later on, I think that after the boat maybe was allowed to dry out, what would happen, maybe sand and dirt and different things can get down in between the planks and it gets stuck into that rubber. So it'd be awful hard to clean that out. If this boat were to shrink up from lack of use, laying around the yard or something like that, it'd be a lot better if it was just nice and clean between the planking so that when it swells back up again, it just mates right up really nice and tight. There's no pollution or anything like that in there. And we don't want anything to maintain in there. If we don't put anything in there, we don't have anything to maintain in there. And that's the way we want it, just the way you see it, just like this. And I've proven over the years that this is the way to go. We've tried to use caulking and different things in between it and cotton caulking and everything else. There just is no need of it. The stuff is dry enough so that when we put the boat in the water, it swells up very quickly, mates up nice and tight, perfectly watertight. And the next thing we're going to do is actually cut the planking off around the edge of the boat here, even with the sides of the boat. And I've also found out that a lot of times I tried years ago taking a plank maybe and cutting it to length and cutting it to exactly the right bevel and this and that on both ends and then apply it and everything else, waste of time. The way to go is to just let the planking hang over on both sides of the boat just like this, and it's actually kind of a style of carpentry that is kind of identifiable in a boat like this. I call it hang over and cut off. You know, because that's the way the whole boat is built. Everything is just hung over and cut off. It's a very simple form of shipwrighting. Now our next move here is to cut the bottom planking off where it hangs over past the side planking. In order for us to do that, we're going to have a line. We've got a little plywood gauge here, or a little marking gauge that we've made. As a matter of fact, it's exactly the same gauge we used before to draw a center line, but we've shortened it a little bit, and now it draws a line exactly in line with the side planking on the very bottom of the boat. And you can see here that I've cut the planking off on maybe a 10 or 11 degree bevel rather than the 5 or 6 degrees that it might take to cut it off exactly even. Now there's a reason for that. I've cut it very, very close to that little line that I'd drawn on the bottom planking, which is exactly an extension of the side planking right here. So if I try to cut it exactly the same angle and I should wander just a little tiny bit over the line, I'm just going to end up cutting into the side planking right here. And I really wouldn't be able to repair it. It would just be a mess. The only thing you can do is just keep making the boat smaller, thinner and thinner. No good. I don't want to use fillers and take all that kind of time and do all that stuff. So you have to have some sort of a methodology here in order to make it work out properly for yourself. So what I do is, like I said, I just cut it on a little bit too much of an angle, and then I'm able to plane or sand this part off without damaging the side planking. And so that's exactly the way I'm going to go about it. And the only thing I can say before I start cutting it with the skill saw, I'd like to just show you up here on the bottom of the boat right here. There's a couple of little tiny chips right here. Now it's no big deal, but If I tried to cut this planking off all the way down the side of the boat without scoring it along that pencil line first, this is what's going to happen. And you don't know which plank it's going to happen to. Some planks chip up real easy, some of them don't, and it depends on, you know, your position of your hands or if you wander over the line. The other thing is if you try to set the skill saw too shallow so the blade is not quite sticking out the bottom very much, the blade actually wanders easier when you're cutting. So I don't want to do that. I want the blade hanging out below the bottom of this bottom planking when I'm cutting it off. So basically what I've done is I've come up with this methodology, and basically all I really have to do right now is just pick up a skill saw, start back aft here, and just go from one end of the boat to the other, cutting it as close to that pencil line as I can get. But before I do that, I'm going to give it a little score with, like, say, a plane blade just along that pencil line, and then I'm going to cut out just on the outside of that score line. So here we are, just sawing along the line the way we said we'd do it. You have to hold your left hand on the left-hand side of that skill saw and make sure you keep that skill saw held up properly, because if you were to let it sag downhill, what would happen would be the blade would then again get involved with the side of the boat just the way you don't want it to. Now I just want to show you right here, if I didn't score it the way I did, it would look exactly like this on the other side of the line. It'd be all chipped up, and I'd have to reduce the thickness of the planking and do something really in a major way to recover from that. I just can't let that happen, so that's the reason for scoring it. It works out really well. It only chips up over to the knife cut and stops right there. Now we're just finishing sawing off the last few planks up forward on the starboard side where it hangs over past the side planking. And we're just going to be very careful there because there's one plank missing there, and we don't want to chip it where it faces up against that next plank. So we're just going to go nice and slowly and careful. And once that's completed, then we're just going to pick up a putty knife and just score that polysulfide up against the bottom planking in one direction. Use the same knife and just peel it off in the other direction. And we just wouldn't want it in between there when we're trying to plane, because it's kind of rubbery and the plane just doesn't feel like it's moving properly when it's up against that polysulfide like that. We also don't want to cut it off of there when the stuff is wet. A lot of people try to clean it up when it's wet, but it makes a mess. It ends up all over the place like the stuff has got legs. And once that's complete, we're going to switch over to an electric plane, and we're going to use that to finish trimming off the end of the bottom planking where it still protrudes out past the side planking. Now I could use a hand plane, but it's not quite as fast and it's a little bit more effort involved. So I've switched over in this late stage of the game to use an electric plane for things like this, but I can't quite finish up with it. So what I'm going to do is get down there very close and switch over to a hand plane. The first thing I'm going to do though is show you that I'm planing kind of on a downhill angle because it's the same threat I'm undercutting it. I don't want to chip the bottom planking on the very bottom corner here. And I'm planing right to left here because I'm right-handed, and that's the only way I can work the plane properly. I just don't have any strength with my left arm. The other thing I can say to you is that I'm kind of working my way out in front of myself here with kind of a rough cut with the plane planing uphill. But once I get close to that score line, then I just turn the plane the other direction and have the plane planing kind of downhill. And then I get very close to the line, stop right there, and finish it up with a number 5 standard. About the approach, you know, if the approach is right, then you can feel what you're doing. So here I am going to touch it up here with this number 5 plane, and I've done quite a bit of it already, but I'm up in this area right now. This is very slab sawn right here. You can see the annual rings are in this direction right here, so it's liable to be grainy no matter how many times it's been run through a planer or no matter what. So before you actually finish the boat, you're going to want to straighten all that out because it's probably going to be as seasoned as it could possibly get by the time we're done with the boat here. So it's time to do it. So here we go. And that just, I'm even going to reduce the blade a little bit from there. It's just really And now I can feel the shape of the boat under the plane. Yeah, just skimming it. Now, I want to get some of the lumps in this area out kind of quickly. I'm not out to plane the whole side of the boat, but what I want to do is get the lumps out from under the heel of the plane, because the heel of the plane is under my right hand. That's the hand that I'm doing the pushing with. In the left hand, I'm just holding the plane down tightly against the boat. But the right hand feels all those lumps and understands things before I have to really think about it. So you just see little tiny bits of material coming off there now. The other thing I want to tell you is that, see, this is a pencil line on here. I can't even feel it, but it's there. But that pencil line, you'd think I could get that with like one stroke, but you're going to see wood removed from there, but it still won't take the pencil line. Because the pencil line is down in a hole. Now it's taken 3 stripes, 4, 5, we have 6 or 7 passes over there. We still haven't got the pencil line off. What I'm trying to show you is that I'm not unduly removing a lot of wood from this boat. I'm only making it flatter. Now you can see that pencil line start to go. And it needs a little bit more work up in here. But now if I touch it, it feels great. The other thing is when you're planing, you can actually hear the lumps under the planer. It'll click over them. All kinds of different things happen. It makes dark stains under it, so you can see where the planer's been touching. You can hear where the planer's been touching, and you can feel it all at the same time. Basically, I love working with a number 5 plane. It does things that nothing else will do. You know, even the electric plane, I can't accomplish quite as nice, as smooth a job as I can do with this hand plane right here. But this is really fun for me, no matter how much work it is. I don't mind making these big, long strokes, and it's kind of like a dance for me. I kind of enjoy it, so. So now I'm over here on the port side, and you can see we've cut the bottom planking off nice and flush with the side planking, and we've got that process taken care of. Before I did that, I took a planer and surfaced the very bottom of the boat here just a little bit, so that when I taxied across there with the skill saw, I wouldn't be dancing over any lumps and bumps and things. And when I did, I came across this screw right here. Now this screw obviously hasn't been driven down in there all the way. I guess what's happened is the screwdriver bit fell out of it and smashed into the bottom of the boat and dug it up, and really there isn't much we can do about that, but I do have to attend to this screw. I already took a bit brace and tried to get it out of there, but it just wasn't enough traction in that slot for me to get the thing to turn, so what I've got to do is cut a brand new slot in it, and what I've got right here is my little slot chopper. This thing's a great little tool, man. I've had this thing for years and years, and it works great. All I do is put one end in the slot there. I got it stood up nice and straight to start off with, and I bang on it a few times and get a little bit of a dimple in the slot in there, and then I start leaning it over, and it starts to slide across the slot, and before you know it, you've got metal peeling right up in front of the cutter. And then just pick it out of there and turn it around the other way, and bang on it in that direction, and once it reaches the other end of the slot, you can see it plain as day. You've got a couple of little pieces of metal right in the wood, buried right in the wood right there, that we can just pluck right out of there. And it's got a brand new slot in it, and we can take our bit brace and stick it right in there and back it right out of there, no trouble at all. So here we are on the port side, and we've been rubbing some of this polysulfide off that's been protruding out from between the 2 planks here. Now, you can score it a little bit, but you really don't have to. It's pretty soft stuff. If that was some other kind of compound, you might have a little bit more trouble with it. But this is very, very cooperative, and there's some things you do have to know about it. I mean, the two planks are not exactly even with each other. So here we are up forward, and I'm going to show you a couple of techniques. You can actually just take the palm of your hand and just rub back and forth on it very aggressively like that, and it'll peel it right off of there. But it's quite a bit of rubbing, so rather than do that, at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a putty knife like this, and I don't want to push at it because I could dig into the planking really easy. The two planks are not even with each other, and I don't know which one's the highest. So basically what I'm going to do is draw like this instead of pushing. A couple draws like that, real simple like that, and it doesn't really matter as long as you don't gaff the wood up. It doesn't matter if you really complete it all the way. It doesn't look like I've done anything, but watch this. It just rolls right off of there like that. It's still a little unfair up forward there, but we're going to take a number 5 plane to it and get it smoothed out. Maybe we'll sand it a little bit, but we're pretty excited. We've got the planking all sawn off and faired down here. I'm going to round the corner a little tiny bit, put a plank up forward here and one back aft, but we're right ready to start filling the screw holes.